Hey, so I just wanted to drop in and do like a fairly quick video to update you guys. There's actually a lot of things I just can't talk about and can't tell you about. But one thing is I've, dropped hints, and even a friend that I've had for almost 30 years was just like, come on, it's been like 5 years. This isn't happening, is it? Right? And I'm like, no, I think something really good is about to happen, which is really good after something really, really, really horrifying and terrible, absolutely terrible that I am going through. But I can't go straight into that, but there's just a lot of things. You encounter a lot of different people in this world. You have to be patient with one another. Some people are super loud, some people are shy, and some of us are just both. Some people are narcissistic, some people are not, but most people have something wrong with them. Everyone has something wrong with them, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has gotten really great at addressing mental health, but at the same time not telling us what to do. So like if something works for you, it works. In my case, it's different. I have talked many times about, I'll talk a little bit about mental health, but just someone was talking on and on about my mental health recently and had no idea, no evidence, all of it was bunk. Okay? You can't really go, even if you're slightly in the mental health field, just associate with someone and diagnose them. And so if you are just gossiping to someone about your opinions about someone, you cannot call that a diagnosis and spin it around and use it in the court of law. I'll just say that. But yeah, one perfect example of things that are in the news, it just, a lot of depression is going around. Kwaku L did a whole video where he says that in his mind he was kidnapped and put in a mental institution not that long ago. And it just really, hit home and broke my heart what he went through. But is it good for some people if someone's having a full-on psychotic episode and they need to be seen full-time? Are all mental institutions bad? I definitely don't think so, but I definitely think there are some bad ones out there. Often I am not bipolar and I've never had psychosis. Never been diagnosed with that. But I've known people who have, and sadly, like I've talked about Lori Vallow, how she was just saying, I don't need to sleep because I am already a translated being, and I still do not believe in that belief system. Someone decided I did, and said some horrible things, did some horrible things. So it was just, I'm like, excuse me? Since 2020, I've talked about how there's so much evidence Joseph Smith debunked reincarnations, and no, I do not believe that. It was very clear that Matthew is the prophet. Anyway, you can just watch my other videos, like 3 videos talking about that. But medication, it might be right for one person and not for another. But when it comes to psychosis, I don't think it's a good thing to go it on your own. But I definitely think there needs to be a psychiatrist to diagnose that person. Like someone who's a doctor and goes through the process of doing that. And so, but I've known it's sort of this sad, quiet thing. Like if anyone goes without sleep, they can have a psychotic episode, whether they full on have psychosis or bipolar. It could just be hormonal, new mothers. I know it's such a shame-filled thing. I'm not a mother, I've never had kids, and I've never gone days without sleep. I just think because I have my health problems I've talked about before. I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which gives me anxiety when I'm standing, always. But if I take enough medication to get rid of it, my heart will stop when I sit down because I get bradycardia. Like it just, that is my business. If you're gonna judge me for having some anxiety, that's just rude. Anyone that goes without sleep is probably gonna have psychosis. And it's hard and it's sad, but I don't think we should shame people who do. But it sometimes, like those, not actually an institution, they'll have like a place where people can go and just be monitored, and medication has helped people. I tend to believe really strongly in holistic, but at the same time, dealing with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and my anxiety, holistic can help. The only real, all drugs come from nature. That's a fact. And so pharmaceuticals are controlled and tested and broken down so it's an exact amount. So you're getting an exact amount every day. Whereas if you go get kava, which would act very similar to like my beta blocker that I take, if I miss a pill, I'm gonna start having anxiety. Same time, I've been through severe abuse, and if something brings back like an experience I've had with a stalker, or just something growing up that happened to me, I could have heightened anxiety, right? And it's sad. You really find out who your friends are not. And so I had an experience like that a month ago where someone was just, we thought we were friends for a few days, and then whoa, you're just like not being nice as I'm opening up about some really hard things. So I didn't even talk to that person for 2 weeks. I really just like stayed away from them. But sometimes that makes people very angry when you stay away from them. So something that we hear a lot about, there's, I'm not gonna go off and talk much more about bipolar or psychosis. That's just sort of my opinion, that I have seen people sometimes be maybe 51-50 and get actual help because they couldn't stay at home and get help, right? But you need an actual doctor to diagnose that. A bishop should not be trying to do that because he's not a psychiatrist. He's not gonna get enough inspiration to be one. But a lot of the world, it's just a result of the world that we live in, and hearing so much about narcissism and all these awful things. It's a horrible, tough reality of the world, but as sexual abuse and just violence and everything goes up, it's going up in families, it's going up in all relationships, and sadly the rising generation are becoming curious, younger and younger, and watching pornography and thinking this is normal. So it's really hard for them to understand when they're in an abusive relationship. And so sadly, a lot of victims of abuse will develop borderline personality disorder, which can often have narcissistic traits with it. And it does that mean they're full on narcissists? I love watching Romney's videos about that. And there aren't that many people that really would be diagnosed in the DSM as a narcissist. But like being the last days, people going through, and just women, I'm a tough woman, I am powerful, it can get into these really hard narcissistic things where you think you're being tough, but you're not being Christ-like, you're reacting, and then they don't realize they're developing emotional immaturity. So it's like where it turns out you think you're being strong, but it's like, I think that person's gonna say something really awful and mean about me. I know they are. So I'm just gonna list and just destroy them and say and tell them everyone hates them and make them feel alienated, so I'll feel a little bit better. But do you? Do you feel better? Do you feel happy now that you've destroyed someone publicly in an awful way and also told them into lies? But it's also trying to understand. There's a girl on YouTube that I follow that has borderline personality disorder. They aren't always mean. Sometimes it just is very hard. Anyone who's been through abuse is gonna have some of those. You're gonna read that description and be like, sometimes I'm going to maybe, but they may not get diagnosed, where you just see people as black and white. you said something in your bedroom alone and that hurt my feelings. So you are bad now. You are bad. There's no good in you. You deserve all the mean, horrible things I can possibly say and do to you, right? Does therapy really get rid of these things, or this is something that the church talks a lot about, although we do really believe in mental health, but like this talk just kept coming in my mind as I keep hearing about narcissism, and it seems like everyone I meet is like, I dated someone that was narcissistic. It was like everyone they dated was narcissistic, or everyone they meet. And I started realizing it seems like everyone around me, as I read about narcissism, seems pretty narcissistic, because frankly, we live in America and we start to believe we're entitled, or that everything around us should be exactly how we want it to be. And, we're the richest, according to our own prophet says, I've never seen the world be this rich. Like we need to fight against pride. We need to fight against the entitlement and the narcissism. We all have to fight against it. But this talk from 1989, I was alive back then, by President Ezra Taft Benson of the church, but it was skipping, I believe it wasn't written, it was read by, because you see a picture of President Hinckley on there, but it was written by Benson, but Hinckley actually read it. And I remember watching and listening to it and reading it several times. And my dad was the state commission president, and so he read that a lot with the missionaries. And it seems like I've seen people bring it out, but then I've seen the same person pull out that talk and do it really pridefully, and they're angry, and like they're angry and they're prideful and they're being mean and being a little bit of a bully to someone. They're like, you read this. So I'm trying not, but when you go through it, it's a great talk. But pride is the universal sin. And it's a great talk because there's no one is exempt from something in here unless you have been translated, which I'm sorry does not include Lori Daybell, and all the other last names she said. I think she's still married, so I think she's still Daybell. But it's just, there are a lot of people that are struggling with narcissism being drawn into some extremist groups. We know that. But as you read through this, says the Doctrine and Covenants tells us that the Book of Mormon is the record of a fallen people. Doctrine and Covenants 29. Why did they fall? This is one of the major messages of the Book of Mormon. Mormon gives the answer in the closing chapters of the book in these words: behold, the pride of this nation, or the people of the Nephites, hath proven their destruction. Moroni 8:27. And then, lest we miss the momentous Book of Mormon message, and I'm just going to kind of stop here so I don't sound, like as I was talking about the world ending in the 10 cities video. I think God lets war happen. I don't think he causes it. I don't think he rejoices in the destruction of people. I don't think it's something, because more members, and I think people are starting to forget this fact, as members of the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, we are very not Calvinistic, but I start to hear people start to sound, and I'll just go with the interpretation of, I already mentioned Kwaku El. I think he's a very intelligent guy that was a convert from the church. He's African American, but he's very American. He goes back. He has a few other ethnicities as well, right? Kind of like me and most other people, but his heritage goes really far back in America, and so he's had some slave ancestors and things like that, but he's also, he has great videos about that to give you perspective of someone like, why would someone join the church if they're African American and stay? Well, they do. He did, and he loves the church, right? But I can't go into that because I'm not black, right? But he talks a lot about Calvinism because he was a convert, and it was taught in a lot of these faiths, and he debates people, and so he's debated with people that claim to be Calvinist. So he's going off on how they believe. Well, I kind of believe this, but I don't really believe. But when you understand it, you're like, wow, I understand what is so beautiful about the restored gospel of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that we don't think these bad things were supposed to happen. Does that make sense? God is the master. Well, I mean, he can manipulate things for our good, and he's always in control, but we always have our agency. So what happens because of our agency? Most of the bad things happen because of our agency. Even my friend that was an environmentalist, I'm like, I don't know. She was like, maybe all these destructions are really caused by pollution and us messing up the earth. But it was prophesied. It's an interesting thing. We'll find out in the end, right? She was studying in Portland to be naturopathic doctor, so of course she was very an environmentalist and things like that. And that's okay. You can be an environmentalist and be a member of the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints. You can also believe in masks, but not be a Democrat or not be pro, like, lock everything down. Like, some people just went to the medical school. Like, I mean, I didn't go to medical school, but I'm in the medical field. And you take 101 and you learn that a cough goes, I think I'll change it, but it's just an estimate. When you cough, because I thought it was really funny, like 6 feet. Be 6 feet. I'm like, if people are sick, your cough goes over 24 feet. So your spit goes over 24 feet. And when that spit goes into someone's lungs, if you're sick, they get sick. Right? And so me, since a little kid, I knew that. And I had a mom in the medical field, and so I would hold my breath and walk away. And if I did that the moment someone coughed, and just stayed away for a while, and just, in my mind, I'm like imagining the drop. You know, like seriously, since like 1990. But other people don't understand it, you know, so then you understand that a mask keeps your spit from going 24 feet, so you can social distance, and you can prevent getting each other sick if everyone wears a mask. But of course, if grandma's wearing a mask and no one else is, that's how she got sick, because it's not a hazmat suit. That's why they invented hazmat suits way before COVID, because they knew there were limitations. But you've got President Nelson, who is a heart surgeon, and he knows if any of his spit goes into this, your body cavity is supposed to be sterile, like it will just kill that person. So they know the effectiveness of masks at preventing his spit from traveling a certain distance. Of course, air has to go through it and some spit has to go through it, right? But it's all about the distance thing, and it's all about preventing you. Like, I was wearing a mask because when I first moved to Arizona, they still had the mandate, and but it was lifted a little bit only if you had your vaccine, and so I hadn't had mine. So I was like, okay, I'll just keep wearing my mask. And this lady's like, are you afraid? Huh? Like, what, you afraid? You think I'm gonna get you sick? And I just looked at her, I said, I'm protecting you from me. And I talked about how your spit goes 24 feet, and this is helping me be able to sit next to you. So if I'm asymptomatic and your lungs somehow are compromised, you just don't know it, and you could die from COVID or a certain strain of COVID. A lot of people just don't know. A lot of people thought they were healthy and did die from COVID, right? It was a very severe disease, a severe illness, severe virus, right? Anyway, we need to not have pride and judge. A lot of people judge President Nelson because they found the evidence that the mask didn't really protect you, so they don't work. I kept hearing that in the news. I'm like, you're just a politician. You're not in the medical. There's things you don't understand. Because I understood it. I had no issues with masks, and I kept wearing mine. But I understand there's some people that just go into the psychological part, and it's like, fine. You know, you feel like your kids are not growing up normal because they're seeing people with masks, and it probably, you know, wasn't. I'm sure there's a lot of bad things about that. But anyway, moving on. You know, talk about pride. You just have to understand it's something, as you go through this, it's just beware of pride. You know, it was a warning to Oliver Cowdery and Emma Smith. A lot of people like to judge people in church history as they find one thing bad and they're just like, oh, they're all bad, you know. Pride, I'll just put one other part. Pride is a very misunderstood sin. Many are sinning in ignorance. In the scriptures, there is no such thing as righteous pride. It is always considered a sin. Therefore, no matter how the world uses the term, we must understand how God uses the term so we can understand the language of Holy Writ and profit thereby. Most of us think of pride as self-centeredness, conceit, boastfulness, arrogance, and haughtiness. All of these are elements of the sin, but the heart or the core is still missing. The central feature of pride is enmity. Enmity towards God and enmity towards our fellow man. Enmity means hatred towards, hostility to, or a state of opposition. It is the power by which Satan wishes to reign over us. Pride is essentially a competitive in nature. We pit our will against God's. We then direct our pride towards God. It is in the spirit of my will, not thine, be done, as Paul said. They seek their own, not the things which are Jesus Christ's. And so it sounds so simple. In the Book of Mormon is all about the pride cycle. Like, people get really rich. This where we are, and things fall. Like then it falls. The pride falls. Like everything, economy falls, or just everything. Or people get so obviously wind up in enmity that there's a huge war, and a lot of people, the economy dies, or a lot of people are lost. Lives are lost in war, and then they get humbled. And then they get happy and grateful, and then you go back up that cycle. So it's definitely something we have to remember, is you meet someone, you don't know them. Even if you have the priesthood, you can't, there's also that part. You can't, I talk about these snap judgments. A priesthood holder could make a snap judgment. I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to hear what you say. I don't need to know what really happened. I don't need to ask you what maybe somebody misheard, or I don't know. But I'm just gonna, no, I'm not gonna let you talk, and I'm not gonna like da 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 da. You were just wrong. Like, is that prideful? I kind of think so. If you're not gonna let someone talk, you're not gonna tell someone what someone else has said they said or did, or it sounds a little scary to me. I don't think that's how the judgment day is going to be. And so it's experiences where someone judges you or condemns you, and you can't show all your evidence or show everything you wanted to say. It's just like, okay, I look forward to being patient, enduring to the end, but when it does end, because then you can't hide from any of the truth. You can't manipulate anyone anymore. You can't just go scream and convince people you're right, because anyway, God knows you, because he's working and making effort and watching us constantly, and his angels are watching us and writing down everything we say and do not say. So they know the truth. And sometimes there's evidence of that, but when you're afraid of the truth, you talk over people. You don't let them talk. You don't listen to them. You don't ask them questions, because they're just wrong. You've cut them off in your mind, and you are going to regret that. So listen to each other. Be kind to one another. Ask people questions. Say, hey, I overheard this. Did you say this, or did you mean something else? Do you possibly have evidence of that because you were talking to someone else? Let's maybe not like go to the worst extreme, but a lot of us have been through abuse, and we think in extremes, and we do develop pride because we want to protect ourselves. It just sort of like, I'm putting on my armor, and you think it's a good thing. You think it's a good thing to put on that armor, and you're tough, and you've got your little prickly pearls coming out, and you're just gonna bash everyone. Before you're about to hurt me, I'm gonna say a bunch of horrible, mean things, awful things. I'm gonna make you feel alienated and completely alone because nobody likes you. That person, your bishop, doesn't like you. That person doesn't like you. Everyone hates you. It's just like, does that come from God? Does that really come from God, to try to destroy someone in every way possible and destroy their hope? No, it does not come from God. It's not good. So let's just be kind to one another. It is hard. I work on it every day, and sometimes I really fail. But sometimes I do create a boundary myself and say, please don't. If someone's very awful to me, and I know it's just gonna get worse, I myself will say, please, I need that boundary. Please don't talk to me. And it sounds extreme, but if there's a pattern, it keeps happening, and they are doing awful things to you, you do need to create a boundary and say, hey, please, I need you to stay away from me. And you have to respect that. We all have to respect each other's boundaries. We may not be perfect at reading nonverbals. I consider myself pretty good at reading, and I will stay away from someone, but ironically, someone doesn't. But if someone has information, you're like, what happened? Could you please tell me what's going on? And someone doesn't, like, I think it's a natural reaction to be kind of like almost raise your voice, be like, what's going on? But we just gotta be careful what we say about each other, and what we judge, and be slow to anger. And I need to work on that, you need to work on that, everyone needs to work on that, but at the same time, it doesn't mean you need to be passive. If someone does hurt you, I've gotten away, I've had to cut people out of my life that have hurt me before, right? And that's okay to do. And sometimes personalities do not match. Someone with really bad anxiety probably shouldn't be around, or even live with someone who has severe anxiety as well. I don't think that's a good thing. It's gonna make that person feel more anxious, that person feel more anxious, but live in truth, seek truth by using your brain and asking questions.